looting, the destroying must stop.
Was put all over media. And we immediately gave that tape to the FBI and to the DOJ, as well as the mayor of the city, Ms. Jennifer Roberts. What we were supposed to do, we gave it to the DOJ and to the FBI, and we notified the mayor of the city, Jennifer Roberts.
Okay, so this is great media fodder, man. They absolutely love it. If it bleeds, it leads. If it's gory, it's a story. And so, ultimately, everybody is saying the exact same thing. Where are the videotapes? Release the tapes. Okay, so this is going to be my final thoughts, my reactions, my perspective about Rakeyia Scott's cell phone video. She released a video yesterday, her video. So the wife was on the scene, she witnessed it, and she released the video. She had a cell phone recording of the entire incident. And we've learned so much information. But essentially, this is to the Charlotte, North Carolina police. Where's the gun? Where is this gun at? Where's it at? Are you even sure that there's a gun? Rakeyia Scott released a video that she recorded of the murder of her husband, Keith Lamont Scott. And did y'all notice that the black spot by Keith Lamont Scott's feet, in that one infamous photo, that photo that Kerr Putney, the police chief of the Charlotte Mecklenburg County Police Department, in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, that's named after Charlotte of Mecklenburg Strelitz, who's the wife of the tyrant King George III, who one-third of the colonial whites fought a revolution against for America's independence. That's King George III's the wife. Why would you name your city and your county after the tyrant, the wife of the tyrant that we fought against? I think y'all should think about changing your name, Charlotte Mecklenburg. But the photo that Kerr Putney, the police chief of the Charlotte Mecklenburg County Police Department, the one that he released because he said, for the sake of transparency, you see that they circled on the bottom the black spot, a fuzzy black spot that they said was a gun. And they released that for transparency's sake, but they would not release the videotapes. So, Kerr Putney, are you actually being transparent? I call bullshit. There's your truth, there's his truth, her truth, and then there's the truth. And the videotape never lies. Here's that humiliating photo. So clearly, there's a fuzzy black spot with a circle around it, which implies that that's the gun, and it's right next to Keith Lamont Scott's feet. But if you check out the video, the one that Rakeyia Scott just released, there's no black spot by his feet at all. So we're left to wonder what happened. Maybe they pushed that gun over by his feet. Maybe it's just a black latex glove, like those other spots supposedly are. Or maybe that's where they planted the gun when they handed that gun over. I wouldn't put it past them to do some heinous, corrupt bullshit like planting a gun. It's very possible that the Charlotte Mecklenburg cops, the defenders of the white banker 1% political aristocracy, the racist, totalitarian, fascist police state would plant a gun on an innocent, unarmed black man in order to cover up their crimes. Remember, Keith Lamont Scott was a quiet man, a quiet family man who has been married to his wife, Rakeyia, for 20 years, with 7 kids, who walked with a cane, and he'd peacefully walk around the apartment complex frequently. He read his Quran dutifully. He was waiting at the bus stop to pick his son up. Keith Lamont Scott was a gentleman. He was a superb gentleman. So you're wondering, can cops be so brazen? Can they be so brazen to plant evidence right in front of everybody, even though there's a cell phone camera recording? Of course they can. Remember Michael Slager? That was the guy that killed Walter Scott in South Carolina just last year on April 4th, 2015. Michael Slager shot Walter Scott in the back, and he killed Walter Scott. Then Michael Slager tampered with the evidence to cover up his crime to make the scene look worse than what it really was. And then Michael Slager called his boys in blue to help him cover up his crime of murdering Walter Scott. And if there wasn't a recording, he would have got away with it. But Michael Slager knew that he was being recorded. He saw the man recording him, all to the side, but Michael Slager still tampered with the evidence. He still murdered Walter Scott, shot him in the back. He tampered with the evidence. He didn't think anything would happen to him in spite of being videotaped. So yeah, cops are that brazen. They think that they're above the law. They are above the law. There's no rule of law in America. Julian Assange is correct on that. White folks who kill black folks actually get rewarded for it monetarily. George Zimmerman got $250,000, $250,000 for that gun that he killed Trayvon Martin with. $250,000. And a lot of times, these police officers, they'll be paid to leave. You had Michael Mattingly of the LMPD. When he killed Michael Newby, he was paid like $100,000, $200,000 to quit, and then he found another job in a different department. So, kill a black man, get a big paycheck, and then move on. And then you compare it to what the family actually gets, the paltry $5,000 settlement because they didn't have a good lawyer. So if you're a police officer and you murder a person, you're going to still keep your job, still get paid by the taxpayers. The bill, the $5,000, comes out of the taxpayer money, so we actually all pay for it collectively when we lose these lawsuits. It doesn't come out of their retirement pension. They don't lose their job. In fact, the bad men continue to keep their jobs and continue to oppress and victimize more people, even though they have blood on their hands. Check out Betty Jo Shelby. She'll be wealthy by the end of all this, even though she took Terrence Crutcher's life. Just look at her mugshot. In her mugshot, she is so smug and arrogant, you just want to slap her. I mean, and you want to say that's sexist? I mean, where did I get those sentiments from? She's so arrogant. Where I got the sentiments from was from a white female prosecutor about an accused black man. They come in, all cocky, you just want to slap them. And it was okay when she said it. I didn't hear any outrage about that. So, you know, now you got a problem with the idea of what? My suggestion? Just remember that a white woman can pull a trigger just as quickly as any other person out here can. And white womanhood is the source for white supremacy. The KKK did what they did in defense of white womanhood. We got to protect our white women. They did it to protect the Tommy Laurens of the world. Tommy Lauren, which actually finally you had Trevor Noah just said something about. So white women, although historically intimately oppressed, they're allowed to exist at the very least, and should be rewarded at the very most. So that's got to be nice, to be allowed to exist or to be lavishly rewarded for murdering a black man, taking out a black man's life for no reason. Just start a GoFundMe page. I'm sure she will make a ton of money for her legal campaign. So, of course, cops can be so brazen. She did that, too. She did that to Betty Jo Shelby. Betty Jo Shelby just shot Terrence Crutcher. Of course cops can be so brazen. Just look at all the crazy violence that's caught on videotape. They kick women in the face. They push them down. They shoot dogs. They tase that white man in the car for supposedly having pot. Tase him until he had brain damage. They beat that homeless guy out in California until he didn't have a life no more. He was unrecognizable. There was one white man that asked, "Are you going to kill me? Are you going to kill me over this?" And yeah, they did. They did kill him. They shot that one homeless guy in the back in Arizona, up on the mountain. All these videotaped. In spite of them being videotaped, they're still doing it. They don't care if the videotape is running. They're above the law. They kill, assault, rape, and rob with impunity. Look at all these civil forfeitures. Police have the safest job out here, safer than a logger, than a garbage man, or a farmer, or a pilot. They're not even in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in America. They got the backing of the state. Then they got the backing of the white-collar mafia, the judges, jailers, constables, sheriffs, politicians, city councilmen, mayors. Did I mention the prosecutors, right? The county and the state attorneys. They got the entire state that backs their crimes up. Remember the New York cops who killed Eric Garner? They saw that man was recording him. They saw him recording them, still killed Eric Garner, still choked him to death. These pricks are so arrogant and highfalutin, they think they're above the law. And they think that they're above being punished. And a lot of times it's true. They only get 6 months of training when cosmetologists have to train for 2 years. And yet, Kaepernick's the problem. Kaepernick is who they protest against. That's who the white, racist, patriots are against. That's who they're mad at. For making the comfortable feel disturbed. You're disturbing the comfortable, Kaepernick. Why are you doing kneeling against this, racist national anthem? Very racist. He was a slave owner. He even killed a white abolitionist, Francis Scott Key was. It's a militaristic song about a war we didn't win. We killed a bunch of Native Americans, tried to invade Canada. We thought they would be our liberators, but they weren't. Oh, no, they thought that we were going to be the liberators. Oh, it'll be easy to take over Canada. They will welcome us as their liberators. Where have we heard that before? We just did that in March 2003, still in the war on terror 15 years later. So just like MLK, I'm here to disturb the comfortable and to comfort the disturbed. It took the CMPD 2 years before they released the videotape of the shooting of Jonathan Ferrell, the unarmed black man who was shot 10 times and killed in 2013 for knocking on a white woman's door. That black spot by Keith Lamont's feet, it doesn't look like anything to me. Neither does the black spot underneath Mr. Undercover Wolfpack and red shirt white man's left shoe. Black latex gloves are being thrown around all over the place, unless they're guns, and the object was supposedly in Keith Lamont Scott's left hand. It was in his left hand. So he fell down, his left hand would be on the other side. Why would the gun be on the right side? He's a right-handed man, and he's holding something in his left hand. So if he would have fell down, then it would have been on the opposite side of him. And how can we trust the police at this point? With all their secrecy, with all their lies? So whatever the object was, that, it looked like he might have been holding the object, but the video that we've seen with the cell phone, we haven't seen it. And the Kerr Putney, he says that you can't tell with the 2 videos that they have what is in his hands. So whatever the object is, it's anybody's guess. It could be something to do with his traumatic brain injury. Perhaps it was the Quran. Perhaps it was the book that he always loved to read. Perhaps it was a gun. At this point, I don't trust a single word of what the cops say. And that photo that Kerr Putney released to the public, that shows which side he's on, not the oppressed. Give a black man some of that white power, and watch how much he eats up that white privilege. Kerr Putney is the gatekeeper. He turned his back on his black brethren immediately. And Brentley Vinson killed the black man. He was murdered by a black man, and the police chief is covering up his crimes in order to get that white man's paycheck. Uncle Tom House Negroes. Hello, this is the face of a field Negro. But that photo of that supposed gun, released by Kerr Putney, that was by Keith Lamont Scott's feet. That photo, how humiliating, how embarrassing. They've got his pants pulled down. I mean, what the fuck is the point of that? He was shot 4 times in the front. So why are the 5 cops that are on the scene pulling Keith Lamont Scott's pants down? What is the point? Then Kerr Putney says that he doesn't want to release the videotapes. And it's videotapes with an S. It's plural. Because there's several tapes. 2. I think. Only 2. More on that in a second. But Kerr Putney said he won't release the videotapes because he doesn't want to show the victim's last moments to the world. Oh, that's nice, Kerr Putney. You're being nice. You don't want to show the last moments, to the world. But you'll release that photograph that's got his pants pulled down. You'll release that. What, you blurred the image? No, we saw the image. It's clear. His pants are pulled down. He's flipped over, or he's flipped on his side, and his pants are pulled down. You can see his butt. So that's bullshit. If I get gunned down, show that video. Show the world about me getting shot up. I want you to remember me. And I want justice for being unjustly gunned down. Remember my legacy. You know what? Oh, we don't want to harm the family. No, don't listen to that. I'm telling you right now, show the videotape. And how come there's only 2 videotapes? So let's count how many videotapes there should be. There's the dash camera of the SUV that just comes pulling up like gangbusters, right? And then that's when he got shot. That SUV comes up like gangbusters, like he's Mr. Billy Badass, the big bad Billy Badass on the block. He came to escalate the situation. I'm in charge. Shut up. Do what I tell you. Now there's a dead man. Good job, Mr. Have to run into the scene, Mr. SUV. You really saved the day there. You escalated the situation, made it worse. But that SUV, which is the only cop car which is clearly marked police, should have a very clear video of what happened to Keith Lamont Scott. Because it was right in front of him. It was right in front of that SUV. And then there was the 2 undercover SUVs. So there's 2 other police vehicles, at least. There might be a 3rd one. So that's 4 videotapes so far. There's 4 dash cams, 3 at the least, 4 at the most with the dash cams. And then the undercover SUVs. Keith Lamont Scott probably had no idea what the hell was even going on. He was being jumped by a bunch of thugs. A bunch of Dylan Roofs and Michael Slagers. Dylan Roof had a body vest. You're telling me that a regular white person couldn't put on a nice dress shirt and put on a body vest? That doesn't say that you're the police. He's getting jumped out of nowhere for doing nothing. You're not even going after him. There was no probable cause to even stop him. There's a black man alone by himself in a vehicle. Let's go after him. He must be doing something wrong. So anyways, there's at least 3 cop vehicles there, so that's at least 3 dash cams, maybe 4. And then there's a total of 5 cops on the scene. 4 initially, and then that SUV man that pulls up. And we don't know any of their names except for Brentley Vinson. So that's wonderful. Why do we keep the police names covered and hidden? But there's 5 cops on the scene, which means there's 8 videotapes total. The 3 dash cams and the 5 body cams that's supposed to be on every single one of the North Carolina police people. The cops. It's supposed to be on their cops. It's supposed to be a body cam. It's supposed to be on each one of the police officers. So, just 2? There's only 2 videotapes. Yeah, right. Okay. Where's the other 6 videotapes at? Where's the other 6 videotapes? There's supposed to be 8. The Charlotte, Mecklenburg, North Carolina police are corrupt. Corrupt. That's why 5 of the last 6 shootings in Charlotte the past year have been quote-unquote justified. That's why 3 of those 6 slayings in Charlotte by the police were not videotaped. They conveniently, just like Brentley Vinson, forgot to turn on the body camera too. Oops. The cops aren't just turning their camera on because they're not turning their cameras on because they're not being held accountable, because they think that they're above the law. The divided snakes of embarrassment. No doubt they celebrate the gang thieving celebration of genocide every year too. If George Washington had a body camera, if only the Mayflower and DeSoto had a dash camera, if only the Santa Maria, Pinta, and Nina had a dash camera. These damn white conservatives. Look at how they do in Germany. Look how they police in Germany. They don't shoot to kill. They try to de-escalate the situation because they respect life there. Mobility in Charlotte, Mecklenburg is the worst in the country. 5th. North Carolina is 5th for upward mobility for black people. There's intense structural problems in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. There's cuts in social programs by the anti-LGBTQ Republican Governor Bigot Pat McCrory of North Carolina. Did you hear what Pat McCrory said about the different angles of the videotapes? He compared it. This anti-LGBTQ Republican bigot Governor Pat McCrory of North Carolina said he was watching a football game and he saw 4 different camera angles on a single football play. And there still wasn't any agreement on what they were saying. So he's got the power to release the videotapes, and he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. Nah, I don't feel like doing that. We can keep on looking. No, release it, because there's a lot of things that people could see that you all haven't been able to see. And he said there wasn't any agreement on what they were seeing. Oh, yeah, because murdering a person is just like a football play. And that's actually, maybe that's a good point. There's 4 angles with high HD cameras, and people can't even agree on what had happened. So the more evidence that we have, the better we can figure out what really happened. You know, even with 4 different camera angles, we might not be able to tell what actually happened. So that means we don't just need one camera, a cell phone footage of the wife who wasn't even allowed to be on the scene. But how brave was she? How brave was that daughter? Could you imagine being part of a family that if you got shot, your wife and your daughter would risk themselves the way that they did to confront the police like they did? That they loved their father so much? We learned so much more from that cell phone video of Rakeyia Scott's than all the disinformation that came out of Kurt Putney's face. We learned a ton of stuff. We learned a ton of stuff that we hadn't known before. So we learned that Keith Lamont Scott had TBI, traumatic brain injury. He had sustained a traumatic brain injury from a motorcycle accident in November 2015. That's why he was disabled, and perhaps getting a Social Security check because of it. And then that mysterious object in Keith Lamont Scott's left hand could have had something to do with his traumatic brain injury. And since he had a traumatic brain injury, that he just took his medication, which is what she said, he just took his medication, he's got TBI, he's disabled. Perhaps the cops could have been more patient with him and tried to de-escalate the situation. We learned where the cops were, how they were dressed, where they were positioned, what cars they were driving, what they were yelling and hollering about, where Keith Lamont Scott was. The exact location of the incident was near 9453 Lexington Court, so we get the exact address. The New York Times said that, an awesome article, check out the article, but they said that Keith Lamont Scott got out of his older white Ford Explorer, but they called it a truck, so I'm not exactly sure where he came out of, because there's about 2 seconds we see of him, and his back is turned towards us, and it's in front of that SUV that pulled up like gangbusters. His back is turned towards us. So was it out of the truck, or was it out of that SUV off to the side? So I'm not for sure if he got out of the white SUV or the white truck, or the guy in the red shirt, that undercover plainclothes, plain car, red shirt, white skin, unnamed and unidentified stormtrooper Gestapo Nazi was leaning on, pointing his gun at somebody. It looked like he was on the back part of the truck. But then he wanted the baton to break the window. So is it that truck, or was he pointed at the SUV on the opposite side of the road? I would like for someone to tell me. That's a legitimate question, please, if you know. Let me know. Okay, so it seems like it would be the truck because, you know, it was only a couple seconds from the time that you didn't see anything, and then all of a sudden you saw him out of the vehicle. So, and I didn't realize that the Ford Explorers were trucks. I looked at some of the images. The newer models are extended cab trucks, and that truck wasn't an extended cab. It was just, you know, a single, I don't know if it's bucket seats, but it was just a front seat. And then you also, the older ones are more of an SUV, a Ford Explorer. They were both white, so I don't know if it was the SUV or the truck. So Rakeyia Scott was bringing Keith Lamont Scott's cell phone charger to him, and it's a good thing that she had her cell phone on her. And Keith Lamont Scott was parked in a visitor space in their own apartment complex, so right in their front yard, where he often waited for his children to return home on the school bus. There's 2 to 3 plain SUVs in the cell phone footage. Keith Lamont Scott was being jumped by these stormtroopers, by a bunch of stormtroopers in plain white cars with Dylan Roof kind of vest on. Dylan Roof killed, what, 9 people in a church? I'd be terrified out of my mind, too. I'd be confused. What do you do when you're being jumped by a person who dresses like the police or identifies them as the cops, which folks have done before? In fact, Mitt Romney was accused of bragging about dressing up like a cop and terrorizing folks on the road to his college dorm mate. And if immediately it doesn't register that they're the police, then who are you being jumped by? You tell me that the mafia or some wealthy people couldn't have hired some goons? Even Farmer Bro says he's got some goons. So they jump out, they got a vest on. Heck, you could even have like a uniform shirt, a security guard. And Omar Mateen of G4S could jump out. And he's got a uniform on. He says he's the cops. You just got to submit, right? No, no, no. It's confusing. They're wolf packing. They come out of nowhere. And for what? They shouldn't have even messed with him to begin with. So even if people want to make the argument that he had a gun, he didn't point the gun at nobody. Let's assume that he had a gun in his left hand, and it's pointed down. He's confused. He's terrorized. He doesn't know what's going on. Everybody's yelling at him. So his gun's on the side of his body, and he's holding his hands. I'm assuming this. This is a big logical leap, because we don't have any evidence that says that he actually had a gun, except for the liars, the words of the liars. So if he's got the gun on his left hand, I feel that when a person points the gun at you, then that's imminent harm. If it's by his side, I think that's a gray area. If it was holstered, then that's a different, conversation too. If it's holstered, there's no argument. If he's pointing the gun, if it's holstered, there's no argument, he's innocent. If he's pointing the gun, there's no argument, he's guilty. But if he's holding it down by his side, now I got to ask the question, did he raise the gun? Did he raise the gun? There's a police officer in front of him, there's a police officer on the side of him, there's 2 behind him or 3 behind him. He's surrounded by the police. And he's going to what? Point the gun at one of them? He's in the middle of a circle of police. So because of the video of Rakeyia Scott, we see for a brief 2 seconds where Keith Lamont Scott was still standing up, still unhurt, his back facing the camera. We saw that he was wearing the aqua shorts or the pants, and then he had a hat on, a dark shirt. Rakeyia was saying, "Don't do it," and Keith Lamont Scott was standing between the vehicle that he got out of, probably the white truck, and the newly arriving marked police SUV. So he's in between the SUV, his back is faced towards us. We can just barely see over the SUV, his back and his head, the top part of him. We don't see what's in his arms. We don't see what's in his hands, but then we only see for 2 seconds. So we see where he was at, where he was located, what he was wearing. Bright aqua pants, dark T-shirt, white baseball cap. His head is turning from side to side from the confusion of the situation. Neither of his hands, therefore, none of whatever he was holding, if anything, could be seen clearly. Also, we know that 4 shots rang out, just like a bunch of witnesses said. There's 4 shots, they said. Keith Lamont Scott doesn't make any dramatic movements. He took a few steps forward in a non-aggressive manner, then Keith Lamont Scott took a step back. So, assuming the worst, I hope for the best, assume for the, prepare for the worst. So, if he has that gun in his hands, he took a step forward, he took a step back. You know what I mean? That's like, if he raises it, right, it only takes a moment. So, I can understand where some people say, well, who's got the gun out? Well, they all got guns out, too, right? So if he's being jumped by regular people, by a bunch of thugs, by a bunch of Dylan Roofs, a bunch of Mitt Romneys, young college Mitt Romney, and Dylan Roof, who killed black people in a peaceful setting in church, he has enemies. He is being stalked. People are pointing guns at him. So just like that, it's confusing. It all happened in a matter of seconds. So if he didn't know that they were the police, I think there's a gray area. Okay, so he took a few steps forward in a non-aggressive manner, then he took a step back, then that's when the 4 deadly shots were fired into Keith Lamont Scott's front side, probably straight into his chest. Kill shots. Brentley Vinson shot to kill. Shoot him in the chest. There's actually rules for engagement for our military in the war. So in the war, you can't just shoot indiscriminately. You can't just shoot any citizens. You have to wait until you're being shot at. Once you know that you're being shot at, then you know that that person's a person that wants you dead, right? You just can't go around killing anybody and everybody. There's rules for engagement for our military in wars, but apparently there's no rules for engagement for the police in our country. How come our cops don't have any protocol that our military veterans or our military personnel have, and they're engaged in a war? They're fighting the Taliban. Supposedly a small gun from the scene was recovered. At least that's what the paternalistic white female Jennifer Roberts was saying. Some say it was loaded, but the cops also say they don't know if it was loaded. How come they haven't checked that part out yet? And it's said that the small gun they allegedly recovered from the scene has blood, his blood, and fingerprints on it, though Kurt Putney wouldn't say specifically if Kenneth Lamont Scott's fingerprints were on it. Why would he be so secretive about this? Jennifer Roberts also said that Kenneth Lamont Scott had an ankle holster. Kenneth Lamont Scott was being stalked by some of his past enemies who like to drive by him and point their guns at him, psychologically terrorizing him. Kenneth Lamont Scott had to look over his shoulder for criminal citizens and apparently criminal cops, too. That's what confused Kenneth Lamont Scott. Who are these people and why are they doing this? Is this how cops act? Is this how cops behave? A witness at the scene said that one cop directed the other cop to get the gun. So go get that gun. You know, there should be an independent person in this scene who's independent that we could trust. I don't trust the cops. They're a gang, and they're going to lie and protect each other. It's what they do. So who are we supposed to trust when something like this happens? You have a cop watch. You got the Black Panthers. So White Panthers, if you have the White Panthers come up, cop watch, Black Panthers, any independent group that comes up and they're videotaping that, and they're non-biased, peaceful, just a video camera, I trust that person. I trust that individual. I trust that person. They have no stake in the matter. They don't have a dog in the fight. They just want to document the scene and then let the public know what the scene was. And that's perfect.